They found each other in a conversation that should have taken 6 months. Instead, it took one night. She finished a sentence he hadn't started. He answered a question she never said out loud. Somewhere around hour 4, both of them had the same quiet thought. Finally. Typology calls this the golden pair. INFJ and INTJ, two of the rarest minds on the planet, wired almost identically, finding each other in a world that understands neither of them. It is supposed to be the easiest love story there is. It usually isn't. Because the exact thing that makes them recognize each other so fast is the thing that makes them almost impossible to repair when it breaks. And almost nobody warns them. By the end of this, you'll know precisely where this pairing fractures the 7 pressure points, and why the couples who survive it are the ones who stop treating their similarity as a shortcut. This pairing shows up everywhere. In marriages that look flawless from the outside, in friendships 15 years deep that end in 1 week of silence, in 2 people who write each other paragraphs at 2 in the morning and then can't get through a Sunday afternoon without one of them shutting down. You know the picture. He plans 3 years ahead and goes cold when the plan gets questioned. She reads the room before she walks into it and carries what she picked up for days afterward. They both need enormous amounts of time alone. They both find small talk physically draining, and they both quietly suspect that most people are running on autopilot. Carl Jung named the mental process underneath both of them introverted intuition, a way of perceiving that skips the surface and jumps straight to pattern, meaning, and what happens next. It's the rarest dominant function there is. INFJs and INTJs are the only 2 types who lead with it. That shared wiring is real. It's also the problem. We're going to walk through 7 reasons the golden pair struggles. And we're starting with the one that feels like the best part. What these 2 call love at first sight is usually something else. It's cognitive relief. The first month is unlike anything either of them has experienced. It isn't butterflies. It's silence, the good kind. Both types spend their whole lives translating. Leading with introverted intuition means arriving at conclusions without a visible trail and then being asked to show your work by people who need a straight line. Jung described this function as perceiving the image behind the fact. When 2 people who both do that finally meet, the translating stops. Researchers studying rapport call this cognitive ease, the specific pleasure of being understood without friction. So when an INFJ says a particular INTJ made them feel sane for the first time, they're not being dramatic. They're describing what it's like to put down a weight they'd carried so long they forgot it was optional. And it happens fast. Both types run their read of a person internally and privately, which means by the time either one says anything out loud, the verdict is already in. 6 months of ordinary courtship gets compressed into a single night. Neither of them notices what got skipped. But relief is not the same thing as compatibility. And the second discovery is where these 2 minds quietly split. They see the same thing, then they do completely different things with it. Introverted intuition hands both of them the same picture. What happens next is where they diverge. The INFJ's second function is extroverted feeling. It scans the emotional field, tracks how everyone in the room is doing, and treats harmony as information. The INTJ's second function is extroverted thinking. It scans for inefficiency, tracks what isn't working, and treats the fix as the entire point. In Jung's model, these 2 sit on the same axis, which means they aren't different flavors of the same thing. They're opposites. When one is loud, the other goes quiet. So they'll look at the same ruined evening, reach the same conclusion about why it went wrong, and then one of them wants to sit inside it together, and the other wants it solved by Tuesday. Same diagnosis. Incompatible prescriptions. And it compounds. Because each one starts reading the other's response as a character flaw instead of a different second gear. She decides he doesn't really care. He decides she doesn't really want it fixed. Neither of those is true. They're both doing the most loving thing their wiring knows how to produce. Now, here's where it gets more complicated, because their similarity does something to their judgment that neither of them can see from the inside. 2 intuitives with no reality check become an echo chamber. Introverted intuition is powerful. On its own, it's also unfalsifiable. It produces certainty without visible evidence, a conclusion that arrives whole and feels exactly like knowledge. Normally, a partner who perceives differently pushes back, "Are you sure that's what she meant, or is that what you decided she meant?" Two intuition dominants don't do that. They confirm each other. The psychologist Irving Janis named as pattern groupthink when a tight, like-minded group stops testing its own conclusions because agreement starts to feel like proof. This is how these couples end up 18 months deep into a shared story about a friend, a relative, or a workplace that neither of them ever actually checked. They didn't lie to each other. They just never had anyone in the room who thinks differently. And this next one? It's the one that does the most quiet damage because both of them believe they're being loving while it happens. They read each other's care as its opposite. The INTJ shows love by removing obstacles. The INFJ shows love by absorbing feelings. So when the INFJ is struggling, the INTJ offers a plan because to an extroverted thinker, handing someone a solution is devotion. It costs real effort. It means, I thought seriously about your life. What the INFJ hears is, you're a problem to be managed. Meanwhile, the INFJ offers attunement, checking in, softening edges, absorbing tension before it reaches him. What the INTJ hears is, you don't trust me to handle myself. John Gottman, who spent decades recording real couples in a lab, called these small offers bids for connection. His finding was blunt. Relationships don't die from big fights. They die from bids that get missed over and over. Two people can love each other precisely, generously, constantly, and both still end up feeling unloved because each one is fluent only in the language the other can't hear. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand a relationship instead of just labeling it, who'd rather have the mechanism than the meme you're already doing something most people never bother with, hit subscribe if that's you. Real psychology, explained properly, every single week. Here's the part almost nobody warns them about. When it breaks, nobody comes back to the door. Most couples have one person who pursues and one who withdraws. This one has two withdrawers. Under real stress, both types retreat inward and go silent, the INFJ, toward what people call the door slam, the INTJ into cold analysis. And when the pressure keeps building, both collapse into the same failure state because they share the same weakest function. Extroverted sensing. Naomi Quenk, who studied what happens when the inferior function takes over, called it the grip and described behavior that looks nothing like the person you know, overworking, overspending, reckless exits, detonating a decade in a single weekend. So it rarely ends in a fight. It ends in two closed doors, 4 days of silence, and both people privately deciding the silence proves something. It doesn't. It only proves they're the same kind of tired. And what makes it worse is that both of them are unusually good at surviving alone. Neither one falls apart in a way the other can actually see. Two people who can each go a month without needing anybody will happily go a month without reaching for each other and call it giving space. But this is the root underneath all of it. Both of them built an identity out of not being understood. Ask either type about childhood, and you get the same sentence in different words. I was always the odd one. Erikson's work on identity formation showed that adolescents build a stable sense of self around whatever role reliably explains their experience. For a rare intuitive kid, that role is almost always the outsider, the one who sees too much, the one who says the wrong true thing, the one who learns early that depth costs you a seat at the table. That story becomes load-bearing. It explains the loneliness, and it makes the loneliness mean something. And then someone finally understands them completely. Instead of relief, something underneath starts to panic because if being unknowable was the identity, then being known feels like demolition. This is why these two can get close enough to see the entire floor plan, and then one of them finds a reason to leave. Not because it failed, because it worked. Which brings us to the last one, and honestly, the most important. The similarity was never the strength. The translation is, the golden pair label sells the wrong promise. It suggests the hard part is already finished. Arthur Aron's self-expansion research. The work behind those 36 questions that make strangers fall in love found that lasting closeness comes from partners who expand each other's sense of self. Not from overlap. From being taken somewhere you couldn't reach alone, sameness feels extraordinary on day one and gives you nothing to grow into by year 3. Difference is the raw material. So the INFJ and INTJ couples who actually last are not the ones who understood each other instantly. They're the ones who noticed that instant understanding has a ceiling, and then learn to say the boring sentence out loud. I'm not asking you to fix this. I need 40 minutes, and then I'll come back. That isn't a failure of the connection. That's the connection finally getting built instead of assumed. So go back to those two people. At hour 4 of that first conversation, they weren't wrong. What they felt was real, two rare minds recognizing each other in a world that mostly doesn't. That recognition is a genuine gift, and neither of them should ever apologize for how much it meant. But recognition is a doorway. It isn't a house. Being understood quickly is not the same as being loved well over time. One of those happens to you. The other one, you build. Deliberately, usually in the least interesting moments, the Sunday afternoons, the 4 days of silence somebody finally has to break. The golden pair doesn't struggle because the match is wrong. It struggles because both people were told the hard part was finding each other. It wasn't. If you want to go deeper on the mind sitting underneath both of these types, I made a video on why intuitive introverts suffer the most. I think it'll land somewhere close to home. It's right here when you're ready.